From Austin Film Festival, this is On Story, a look inside the creative process from today's leading writers, creators, and filmmakers. I'm your host, Barbara Morgan. This week on Story, we'll dissect the neo-noir buddy comedy, The Nice Guys, with its writer-director, Shane Black.
The spine of the thing being rumpled, grizzly bears stuffed into suits acting as though in some fashion they're carrying on the knightly tradition, the tradition of being noble.
On Story from Austin Film Festival. We'll be back in a moment. You're listening to On Story from Austin Film Festival. I'm your host, Barbara Morgan. First up, a conversation with Shane Black on his work co-writing and directing The Nice Guys. Set in 1970s Los Angeles, The Nice Guys stars Ryan Gosling as Holland March, a down-on-his-luck private detective and single father hired to investigate the death of a local adult film star. March's detective work puts him on a collision course with a brass-knuckle-wearing private enforcer, Jackson Healy, played by Russell Crowe. Healy and March form an unlikely team as their investigation leads them deeper and deeper into the corrupt and crumbling industries of porn, politics, and auto manufacturing. The Nice Guys also features scene-stealing supporting performances by Margaret Qualley and Angourie. Shane Black has a long resume as a writer and director in the thriller and action comedy genres. In the 80s and 90s, Black wrote the scripts for Lethal Weapon, The Last Boyscout, and The Long Kiss Goodbye. In 2005, Black made his directorial debut with the neo-noir crime comedy Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. Black co-wrote and directed Iron Man 3, which combined his signature dark comedy with a more serious exploration of Tony Stark's struggles with post-traumatic stress disorder. Following The Nice Guys, Black co-wrote and directed the sci-fi thriller The Predator. Black recently co-wrote and directed the heist thriller Play Dirty, starring Mark Wahlberg and LaKeith Stanfield. I sat down with Shane Black for a conversation on The Nice Guys' beginnings as an experimental writing exercise, its legacy as a cult favorite midnight movie, and his love of protagonists who are past their primes and in way over their heads. Clips of The Nice Guys, courtesy of Warner Brothers Entertainment, Inc. So we're here to talk about The Nice Guys, which we have a long history with because we read the screenplay publicly with a cast not in the film.
We had, as the two leads, Peter Weller and Thomas Jane, And they read the thing and acted it out here in a room just like this one. And they were fabulous.
It was a lot of fun, yeah. And so it was really interesting to come full circle here because that's the funny thing about doing that reading. I really can't imagine it now without these two guys. Can anybody else? And that's the way I felt about Lethal Weapon. And you told that funny story a long time ago about you didn't want that Australian guy in there.
He had really long hair, and he had just come off Thunderdome, which is a bomb, having come off of Mrs. Sofa, which was a bomb, having come off of The Bounty, which was a bomb, having come off here of Living Dangerously, which was a bomb. Mel Gibson actually was very smart. He said, "Hey, I'm going to take a year off because I think people are sick of looking at me." And he did. And the film he came back with was our film.
Let's talk just a little bit about the beginning of that. So like what, in the sense of, before we go to the first clips, plural, that what was going on when you wrote that script? And
Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, which I was writing, had been rejected. Yeah. And it was just sitting there. No one wanted to do it until Joel Silver came along. So in the meantime, Anthony Bangarosi, my writing partner, we just said, you know what? We're both really depressed. This really sucks. It's like being in a lifeboat. The reason you like being in a lifeboat is because if it sinks, there's someone with you. You go, hey, I feel terrible. Yeah, me too. Which is why I recommend, if you're a writer, you get some friends. Because it's going to feel like a leaky boat, and it's going to feel like the only one who, at the end of the day, reads this stuff is your mom. And to the extent that you can surround yourself with commiserating people who are on the same beam and not jealous or angry, but simply on the creative sort of pathway that seems in some ways to have crossed yours in a good way. So I said to Anthony, you want to do something? And he said, yeah, well, we got some time, and why don't we each take a character? We like private eye stories. We all big fans of the Rockford Files, or he said, I'll take a character and you take a character, which is, one of those experiments that never works. It's like, how many of you have ever said to yourselves, hey, let's write a screenplay. I'll do like 2 pages and then you do the next 2. And you think it sounds like a great idea, and it's not. So we did that anyway, and I chose the Ryan Gosling character, and he chose the Russell Crowe character. And we ended up, it worked for a minute. It's not going to sustain itself that way because you have to continually sort of consult and collate and get together on something. You can't just be writing parallel. You have to have it converge. And so after a couple weeks, I was writing the Healy character and he was writing the March character. But the point of it was we were really stabbing in the dark with this one. We just had characters. We just had scenes. And we have a lot of scenes that didn't make it to the movie of just these guys doing detective stuff, having things go wrong. For instance, there's a scene, a friend of mine used to know someone who was an EMT at UCLA. And apparently these people were a boyfriend or a girlfriend or just 2 students were walking and they're talking about going to an event or a sorority or fraternity party, and they were on the 5th floor of a garage, and they stopped, and the guy says, actually, I'd like to, and he jumped up onto the little, and he just jumped too hard, went over. So mid-sentence, they're just talking, he goes, yeah, and anyway, and he was just gone. So, and we wrote that happening to March before he gets a check out of the guy, so now the guy's a puddle, and he has to get his check. And so he sort of wades in and the police are coming and he's trying to figure out how he can get away without being a suspect and still get the check out of the blood, And eventually it became a script that got rejected. And it had a lot of problems too. And then it sat for years. And then we said, we should try it one more time. But I had been reading an author named Davis Dresser. He writes under the name Brett Halliday. And they're written in the 30s and 40s, but the plots were great. So I would buy the plot, or a plot element, as it turns out. So I'd pay like $35,000 and get a clue. But I needed that. And the clue that we paid for was someone is desperate to get a porno film, and people keep dying because of it, and it's because of the story of the film. So you think it's because of who's in it. No, it's because of the story. It reveals a secret that a bribe took place and someone's going to jail. So I thought that was a fun enough idea that we would make that the sort of centerpiece. That was our MacGuffin, was this sought-after porn film. So on we went. And Ryan Gosling, I flew to see Russell Crowe because he demands that, I need to talk to him if I'm going to do it. So I flew all the way to Woolloomooloo, Australia, and I'm in his apartment, and he's saying no over dinner because I don't see it. I just don't think it's for me. And I said, yeah, okay. Well, the reason I mentioned it, Ryan Gosling says he would do it. I think he would do it if you did it. And so it was great. He was one of those performers, you get what you pay for. And when you get a pro, you get a pro. You watch the specificity of his acting. And we'll get to that in a moment. But it's all character work. It's all about framing these guys and choking them with paper beforehand, giving them memos about what the mission statement is, what you think, what your notions are about the particular character. And then you could talk about it. We talked about it. And the result was, I thought, something that was genuinely very nice. And audiences who had just come from all the Marvel movies that summer thought, is there something nice? I don't see anything. And so they didn't go. Because we got lost in the shuffle of Angry Birds, X-Men Apocalypse, and Captain America Civil War.
Sometimes things just take longer to catch on.
Oh, we found it on cable. It's a midnight movie. People still love it after 20 years. They see it on, okay. I'm glad. Because at the time they came out, the films I'm most proud of did not do any business. The Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, no one heard of it. Went down the tubes. Was found later. Monster Squad. I don't know if you have any. Found 20 years later. Now there's conventions with thousands of people all over the country. Last Boyscout, midnight movie. Nice Guys, midnight movie. So The ones that made money were basically Lethal Weapon, and eventually some of these broke even or made money, but then Iron Man was that kept me alive, was that Iron Man made a lot of money.
So he brought up character, and I think that's what is the key to this movie, right? Because we love both those guys. I don't know why, but we do.
Let's not underestimate, because you cannot possibly overestimate how much magic people help. You have magic people doing this, and they just sort of bring to it an innate quality. But yeah, that's where we started, character. Those were the first two scenes that my writing partner Anthony and I just sat down and wrote. Who's currently writing a script? You're in process or finished? Who's finished? First draft. Okay, well, you know. No, the first draft we should celebrate because that's yours. No one's messed with it yet. The studio will mess. I just did a picture, and there's a comedian who describes every time he sees a guy go by in front of his car, like across the street on a Segway, he says he always imagines that guy started the journey in a much larger vehicle that suffered a series of mishaps. And now here he goes across the finish line. So love that first draft, because that's the car. That's the perfect car. And then as you go, the lucky thing is if you can make it through and you're still driving, you still got your car. Maybe there's a ding in the window, maybe there's some paint scratches, but you're still in your car and you just got through, and it's mostly everything you want. So they just cherish the first draft.
Your introductions are always so great. It's like we have everything we need to know, but they're also funny and we're also so engaged. And you talked about character earlier. Like in this beginning, what were you doing, or what were you and Anthony doing to fulfill the overall mission of the film?
We had a place we wanted to go to. We were fond of sort of an existential idea of the detective movie. It's a sort of meta feeling of two guys driving around at the end of the world. We had that notion that these two guys are knights in slightly tarnished armor, and they're trying to stumble around current day and do their best to find a maiden worth protecting. They think they have, and then they fail. And so there was that notion, the spine of the thing being, rumpled grizzly bears stuffed into suits, acting as though in some fashion they're carrying on the knightly tradition, the tradition of being noble, when in fact they're complete scumbag losers and not very nice. That's the whole point. It's called The Nice Guys because they're losers and they're not nice. But they want in some way to be nice. One of the favorite scenes, which was Anthony's baby, was the scene where March gets drunk in his kitchen in the middle of the day.
Now, I got one more thing I need to ask you before we're done here.
You want to know who hired me?
Bingo. Yeah. So we can do this the easy way, we can do it the
Glenn.
hard way. What?
Lily Glenn, 2 N's. Old lady hired me to find her niece on Tuesday.
You just gave up your plan.
I made a discretionary revelation.
No, you just gave her up. I asked you one simple question. You gave me all the
I
information.
thought that's what you wanted.
And you realize that despite his drunkenness, there's a little flicker of something, a little, basically a surviving flame of when he used to be sharp, that he can pour a gallon of whiskey over it, he can stuff it down, he can self-destruct, he can try to tear himself down and bring the world with him, but underneath is a flicker that insists on being heard of when he was really good. And he still has that. So that's the thing, is the sort of unseeable but still workable bits of people that in a pinch can be woken up long enough to say, don't give up and get up. I know you got hit, but you can stand. And it's a lot about that. That's what knights in modern days do. They don't go out to a lot of pomp and ceremony. They stumble into knighthood. They're called to it by something they can't resist, some mythic little spark inside them which says, hey, you're an asshole, but in this one instance, there's a myth calling to you. And you better step into it because you can't resist. The primordial draw of stepping into these shoes and filling this myth is stronger than your desire for self-destruction. It's like The Exorcist, my favorite movie. The people who go up against primordial evil are not people, it's not like Priest of the Year. It's an old guy who's dying. It's a young guy who's lost his faith. It's citizens and a plotting cop past his prime. These are not the people you would call upon to fight extraordinary ancient evil, but they are. They're anointed. Despite themselves, they're anointed. They don't want to be, but they are. They're chosen for who knows what reason. They have to step up. And so that was the idea.
Really, both of them are bumbling in their own way. And so I think it's interesting because they're so likable, and I think that's what is a difficult struggle in writing with characters, is like when you're going to make, their flaws are pretty evident. I mean, they're kind of embarrassing. But in fact, you end up really appreciating them because they do make you laugh.
Yeah, stuff that's embarrassing, stuff that's awkward, that's sort of the fun. And the fun is not making it too goofy and funny that you can't then change the tone and suddenly bring it down to something real and affecting, something even very dark.
The daughter really helps both of them. So I was interested that you threw her character in there. And what was the thinking for the two of you?
The thinking was that these two guys needed a conscience, and that's who she is.
Mr. Healy, are you a bad person? What did you do to that man tonight? Did you kill him?
Of course not.
That's good. I knew you couldn't do something like that.
Don't stay up too late, right?
She's their conscience, and she manipulates these two, not maliciously, but she kind of points them in a direction, and it's ultimately for her that they end up doing all this stuff. At the end, Healy is doing what he always does, which is he's eliminating loose ends by killing Matt Bomer's character, strangling him to death. And the little girl shows up and says, if you kill that man, I'll never talk to you again. And she's a pure voice, and the voice of a true maiden, if you carry on the knight metaphor, saying, if you're not honorable here, then I refuse to speak to you. And we played with that concept of later when he kills Blueface because we wanted to leave it so you wondered, did he or didn't he? And it didn't really work. You needed to see that, yes, he did kill him. And then when the little girl says, did you kill that man tonight? He says, no, of course not. He's just lying. He's flat out lying. And it's the one thing you see him feel ashamed about in the movie is lying to the little girl. He cares about that more than beating someone half to death. And so she is the conscience that lets them continue to improve. And self-improvement is a big part of the Healy character. If you notice, he learns a word every day. He goes to his fish tank and he reads to himself and memorizes a new word that he didn't know. He's always trying to make himself a little better. And March is the guy who's given up. March is the guy who's given into cynicism, which his daughter is not. She's not cynical. She's cynical about him. But he's the one who says, you know what? Her husband's dead. She doesn't even know it. I'll take her money.
Don't.
Oh, come on, fish.
He wants
He wants
Why are you doing this? This is not gonna help you.
There you go.
Now, come on.
You're gonna eat that thing, you
Look, you gotta stop and think about this, all right? When you came here tonight, was this what you wanted to happen? What, you came here to make me eat fish? To shoot me? Look, if you come in here, you beat up on me, you trash the place. I understand, I get it, it's part of the job, I accept it, all right? But what did you do? You did something different from that, didn't you? Right? You pissed me off. You made an enemy.
You learn a lot about Healy because we talk a lot, and it's easy to say, we want a character with a code. This is a kind of down-and-out guy, and he's kind of unscrupulous, and he breaks people's arms and doesn't think about it. But he does it because it's the job. And so here's a guy who's being unprofessional. And I think the line that really stands out in the scene is, look, you could have come in here, broke my fingers, beat me up, whatever. I get it. I accept that. But you didn't do that. You started throwing my fish. So how is that helping your case? It doesn't make sense to him. He knows he's dealing with amateurs, and amateurs are the thing that triggers him. People who don't do the job, and they don't adhere to a set of rules, which he's perfectly willing to abide by, including getting beat up. But that's what makes you, I think, like the characters. You find out that, so this is not to him cruelty that he's inflicting. He just believes in a work ethic, right? In the same way that he's trying to improve himself all the time.
Well, this comes also around full circle into the scene you were just talking about where we, where his conscience, you didn't kill that man, right? This set up the fact that this guy kind of deserves, he's cruel. He's going to kill a fish in somebody's tank. But I think that was also a really beautiful piece in the film, that you're taking us all the way around with that. This guy comes back.
Yeah, you don't like him. There's a kind of subtle, maybe not so subtle art in making films with bad guys that you want to go away, that will elicit a cheer if they are suddenly, taken care of, beheaded, dismembered. And it started with Dirty Harry, which was another of my favorite films we talked about last year. It's like how many people by the end just wanted to just shoot the guy. That performance, the bad guy in Dirty Harry, was so effective that it ultimately destroyed that actor's career. He couldn't, no one wanted to hire the psycho from Dirty Harry because they couldn't buy him as a normal protagonist. He's that psycho.
Your dialogue is also snappy, and how much time do you spend actually writing and rewriting that dialogue?
I think you just try to keep it fresh, which means you're always going to be trying to update it, except when you find a nugget and you go, okay, that's a cornerstone. I like this dialogue. It's very hard to do. I keep revising. I always want to keep it loose enough on set that you certainly are going to get one script-wise just by the book, but you also leave room for a little bit of play. Trends will emerge. Bits and runners will emerge. Like if someone will do something in a scene, you go, what if that came back in this scene? You did it before. Wouldn't it be cool if we played on the fact that you've done that? It wasn't in the script, but let's try it. And so it's always a process of updating, but it's hard, and the rust doesn't come off for 3 days once you start writing. And I forget that I know how to do it. I honestly, it's the most insane case of imposter syndrome that you can imagine, where I think, I forgot. I've written my last funny line. I've come up with my last twist. I don't understand how I did these things. And then you keep going and you keep going, and eventually you're like, don't touch that. That's good. I like that. But getting there, past all that rubble of your own self-loathing and self-destructive tendency, where you don't feel truly that you've earned or deserve recognition. So your mind is loath to aspire to something that, in a way, it doesn't feel you really deserve to get, let alone aspire to. And so I fight that all the time, fear, and you replace it with problem solving. You just keep writing through the fear. You just keep generating dialogue through the fear. I'm a piece of shit. I'm a piece of shit. Well, wait a minute. If he says that, no, stupid line. No, well, but if he said that, then we could go, oh, okay, so he says this is, and then the other character jumps in. And pretty soon, without knowing it, you've graduated from fear to problem solving. And you can't be afraid while you're solving a problem. So it's just, you just work through the fear. Imposter syndrome has dogged me. You got to learn, and that's why you also have to be around other people to support you. It's a lonely business, and not to be too groovy, but we're all in it together. You're doing what I'm doing what you're doing. I just wish I was young like you. And all of us should feel like we're in that same communal boat of people just trying to stab at the next funny line, the next this. And if you feel like an imposter, just work until fear becomes problem solving.
On Story is brought to you in part by the Alice Kleberg Reynolds Foundation, a Texas family providing innovative funding since 1979. On Story is also brought to you by Bogle Family Vineyards, 6th-generation farmers and 3rd-generation winemakers, based in Clarksburg, California. makers of sustainably grown wines that are a reflection of their family values since 1968. The project is supported in part by the Texas Commission on the Arts. This show is produced by myself, Barbara Morgan, Elizabeth Mims, and Emily Locke. Our associate producer is Freya Neely, and our editor is Rishi Bajekal. Music is by Brian Ramos. Copywriting by Mazzy Smallwood. Production assistance comes from Dennis Moniger, Travis Kennedy Sound, Phil Mazzetti, and KUT 90.5 in Austin. Go to austinfilmfestival.com to learn more about Austin Film Festival and Conference each October. Until next time, I'm Barbara Morgan, and this has been Austin Film Festival's On Story.